In a small, quiet town where everyone knew each other's business, there was one annual event that brought the whole community together: the shooting competition. It wasn't just about guns, it was about pride, skill, and proving who had the steadiest hand and sharpest eye. People would travel from neighboring towns to participate or watch, making it the highlight of the year. The competitors were usually men, big, burly types with loud voices and even bigger egos. But this year, something unexpected happened. A woman signed up for the beginner's shooting class. She wasn't flashy or attention-seeking. In fact, she blended into the background so well that most people didn't even notice her at first. Her name? Let's call her someone ordinary. Someone you wouldn't think twice about if you passed her on the street. She worked as a librarian, spending her days surrounded by dusty books and hushed whispers. To the world, she seemed like the last person who'd ever pick up a rifle. And honestly, no one believed she'd stick around long enough to make any difference. The instructor running the class was a grizzled old man named Tom. He'd spent decades in the military before retiring to teach shooting skills to locals. Tom was tough but fair, and he ran his classes like boot camp. When the new batch of students arrived, he sized them up quickly. There were young guys flexing their muscles, trying to impress him, and older men bragging about how they'd hunted deer since they were kids. Then there was the librarian. She stood quietly off to the side, wearing jeans and a plain sweater, looking more like she belonged in a coffee shop than a shooting range. Tom raised an eyebrow when he saw her. "You sure about this?" he asked, not unkindly. She nodded without hesitation. "Yes," she said softly. "I want to learn." He shrugged. If she wanted to waste her time, that was her choice. So he handed her a basic rifle and told her to start with the simplest drills while he focused on the others. They all laughed when they saw her struggling to hold the weapon steady. One guy joked, "Maybe we should get her a toy gun instead." Another chimed in, "Yeah, this is going to be fun to watch." She didn't react. Instead, she smiled politely and kept practicing, ignoring their snickers. What none of them realized was that she wasn't there to compete with them. Not yet, anyway. She came to the class because she loved precision. As a librarian, she spent hours organizing shelves, cataloging books, and helping people find exactly what they needed. Everything had its place, and every detail mattered. That same focus carried over to the shooting range. While the others rushed through exercises, eager to show off, she took her time. She watched closely when Tom demonstrated proper stances and techniques. She noticed how he adjusted his grip, controlled his breathing, and steadied his aim. Even though she hadn't fired a single shot yet, she absorbed everything like a sponge. By the end of the first week, the other students were already showing off their progress. Some could hit stationary targets consistently, while others struggled but still talked big. Meanwhile, the librarian remained silent, patiently working on her form. No one paid much attention to her, which suited her fine. She preferred being overlooked. It gave her space to learn without distractions. But late at night, after everyone else had gone home, she returned to the range. Alone under the dim lights, she practiced tirelessly. She borrowed equipment from the storage room, setting up makeshift targets and firing until her arms ached. Each missed shot only made her more determined to improve. She didn't care about winning trophies or earning applause. For her, it was about mastering something difficult, pushing herself beyond what others thought she was capable of. Tom noticed her late-night sessions one evening. He was locking up the facility when he spotted her through the window. At first, he assumed she'd forgotten something and come back to retrieve it. But then he saw her lining up shots, her movements deliberate and focused. Curious, he stepped inside. "Why are you doing this?" he asked bluntly. His tone wasn't harsh, just curious. She turned toward him, startled but composed. After a moment, she replied simply, "Because I can." That answer stuck with Tom. Most people came to his class either to brag about their skills or because they thought it'd be fun. This woman was different. She wasn't here for glory or entertainment. She genuinely wanted to learn, and that intrigued him. From that point on, he started giving her extra pointers during breaks, teaching her tricks he usually reserved for advanced students. He never mentioned it to the rest of the class. They wouldn't have understood anyway. As the weeks went by, the gap between her and the others began to close. The cocky young men still dominated conversations, boasting about their supposed talents. But the librarian stayed quiet, letting her actions speak for themselves. Little did they know, she was building something powerful within her. Patience, discipline, and an unshakable belief in her own potential, and soon, she'd prove just how far those qualities could take her. Even now, as she loaded another round into her rifle during practice, she felt a spark of excitement. She didn't need cheers or validation from anyone else. All she needed was the target ahead of her and the knowledge that she was getting better with each passing day. Whatever lay ahead, she was ready. The second phase of the shooting class brought more challenges and more opportunities for the quiet librarian to prove herself. By now, most of the other students had settled into their routines, each trying to outdo the others with flashy moves and loud boasts. The instructor, Tom, pushed them harder, introducing drills that tested not just accuracy, but also speed and focus under pressure. It was during these tougher exercises that the true colors of the group began to show. Some of the men who had started strong quickly crumbled when things got difficult. Their confidence turned into frustration as they missed targets or fumbled with their gear. Others doubled down on their bravado, blaming everything but themselves for their mistakes: the wind, the lighting, even the quality of the rifles. But, amidst all the noise and chaos, one person remained steady: the librarian. She didn't raise her voice or make excuses. Instead, she stayed calm, focusing intently on every detail. Her classmates continued to mock her whenever they could. One evening, after a particularly grueling session, a few of the guys gathered near the benches laughing about how hopeless she seemed. "She's wasting her time," one of them said, shaking his head. "Doesn't she know this isn't some book club? You can't read your way through this stuff." Another chimed in. "Yeah, maybe she should stick to organizing shelves instead of playing soldier." They thought she couldn't hear them, but she did. Every word stung, but she didn't let it show. Instead, she used their doubt as fuel. While they spent their energy posturing and complaining, she poured hers into learning. After everyone left for the day, she stayed behind, practicing long after the sun had set. Alone at the range, she worked tirelessly, perfecting her stance, adjusting her grip, and honing her aim. Each missed shot taught her something new, and each bullseye gave her a small sense of triumph. Tom noticed her dedication. He often caught glimpses of her late-night sessions while locking up the facility. At first, he assumed she'd lose interest after a few days, like so many beginners before her. But she kept coming back night after night, determined to improve. Her quiet persistence intrigued him. Most students came to his class looking for quick results, eager to impress friends or family. But this woman wasn't chasing validation. She was there for herself, driven by a desire to master something challenging. One evening, unable to resist his curiosity any longer, Tom approached her. She was lining up another shot, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the overhead lights. "You're putting in a lot of hours," he said, breaking the silence. She lowered the rifle and turned to him, startled but composed. "I'm just trying to get better," she replied simply. Tom nodded, studying her for a moment. "You've got potential," he admitted. "But you need to stop hesitating. Trust yourself." His words struck a chord. Until then, she'd been holding back, afraid of making mistakes in front of the others. But Tom's advice made her realize something important. Fear of failure was holding her back more than anything else. From that night on, she resolved to push past her doubts. She started taking risks, experimenting with techniques she'd seen Tom demonstrate. Slowly but surely, her confidence grew. The turning point came during a live fire exercise held outdoors. The goal was simple: hit a series of stationary targets from increasing distances. Most of the students struggled, their shots scattering wildly as the range extended. Some blamed the weather. Others complained about the uneven terrain. But when it was the librarian's turn, something remarkable happened. She stepped up to the line, adjusted her scope, and took a deep breath. For a moment, the world seemed to fade away. All that mattered was the target ahead of her, She pulled the trigger. The bullet flew straight and true, striking the center of the farthest target with a satisfying ping. A hush fell over the group. No one spoke. Even Tom looked surprised. Then one of the men broke the silence with a forced laugh. "Beginner's luck," he muttered, though his tone lacked conviction. Another student rolled his eyes, muttering, "Yeah, right." Despite their skepticism, the librarian knew what she'd accomplished. That single shot wasn't just about hitting a target. It was proof that all her hard work was paying off. For the first time, she allowed herself to feel a flicker of pride. She didn't say anything, though. Instead, she returned to her practice, letting her actions speak for themselves. Word of her success spread quickly among the group. Some dismissed it as a fluke, refusing to believe she could actually compete with them. Others grew curious, wondering if there was more to this unassuming woman than they'd realized. Even Tom started paying closer attention, realizing she possessed a rare quality that couldn't be taught: patience. While the others rushed through drills eager to show off, she took her time, ensuring every movement was precise and deliberate. As the weeks went on, tensions began to rise. The competition within the class intensified, with everyone vying for top spots in practice rounds. Two students emerged as clear frontrunners: a brash ex-soldier known for his aggressive style, and a cocky young hunter who bragged about his years of experience. Both openly dismissed the librarian, treating her as an afterthought. They didn't see her late-night practices or notice how her technique improved with each passing day. To them, she was still just the quiet woman who blended into the background. But the librarian didn't care what they thought. She had bigger goals in mind. With each practice session, she grew more confident, her shots becoming faster and more accurate. She experimented with different weapons, learning how to adapt to their unique quirks. She practiced breathing exercises to steady her nerves and visualized scenarios to prepare for unexpected challenges. She knew the upcoming competition would test her limits, and she wanted to be ready. One afternoon, during a particularly intense drill, the ex-soldier lost his temper after missing a target. Slamming his rifle down, he stormed off, muttering curses under his breath. The young hunter followed close behind, shaking his head. "He's losing it," he said loudly, glancing at the librarian. "Not everyone has what it takes." She didn't respond. She didn't need to. Her focus remained unwavering, her mind sharp and clear. As the others faltered under pressure, she thrived, finding strength in the challenge. She reminded herself why she'd joined the class in the first place. Not to prove anything to anyone else, but to push herself beyond what she thought was possible. By the time the final week of training arrived, the atmosphere in the group had shifted. The initial camaraderie had given way to tension, with everyone jockeying for position. The ex-soldier and the young hunter continued to dominate conversations, predicting their inevitable victories. Meanwhile, the librarian stayed quiet, biding her time. She knew the real test was still ahead, and when it came, she intended to leave no room for doubt. Even as the competition loomed closer, she refused to let nerves get the best of her. Instead, she focused on what she could control: her preparation, her mindset, and her determination. She reminded herself of the countless hours she'd spent practicing alone, the lessons she'd learned from both failures and successes. Whatever happened next, she was ready. And deep down, she knew that readiness might just be enough to surprise everyone, including herself. The day of the annual shooting competition finally arrived, and the small town buzzed with excitement. People from all over had gathered to watch the event, filling the stands with a mix of locals and curious visitors. The air was thick with anticipation as competitors prepared for the challenge ahead. For most of the participants, this was their moment to shine, to prove they were the best in front of friends, family, and rivals. But for the quiet librarian, it was something else entirely. It wasn't about applause or recognition. It was about seeing how far she'd come since that first awkward day at the range. The competition was divided into several rounds, each designed to test different skills. The first round focused on accuracy, hitting stationary targets from various distances. Most of the shooters approached this task with confidence, eager to show off their precision. The ex-soldier and the young hunter quickly took the lead, nailing target after target with ease. Their performances drew cheers from the crowd, while the librarian lingered near the middle of the pack. No one paid much attention to her steady, but unspectacular results. To the audience, she was just another participant blending into the background. But the second round changed everything. This time, the challenge involved moving targets, discs that zipped across the field at unpredictable speeds. The difficulty ramped up significantly, and the pressure began to show. Many competitors faltered, their shots missing wildly as the targets darted out of reach. The ex-soldier grew visibly frustrated, his earlier swagger fading with each failed attempt. The young hunter fared slightly better but still struggled to maintain consistency. Meanwhile, the librarian stepped up to the line with her usual calm demeanor. She took a moment to observe the movement of the targets, calculating their patterns before raising her rifle. Her breathing slowed, her focus sharpening until nothing else existed except the target ahead. With a soft exhale, she pulled the trigger. The bullet struck true, hitting the center of the disc with a satisfying thwack. The crowd murmured in surprise, but she didn't stop there. One by one, she hit each moving target with uncanny precision, her shots clean and deliberate. By the end of the round, even the skeptics couldn't deny her skill. The ex-soldier clenched, his jaw muttering under his breath, while the young hunter shot her a wary glance. As the competition progressed, the challenges became increasingly demanding. The third round introduced environmental factors, wind, uneven terrain, and limited visibility that forced shooters to adapt quickly. Most struggled to adjust, their frustration mounting as conditions worsened. The ex-soldier's aggressive style worked against him, causing him to rush his shots and miss crucial points. The young hunter tried to compensate by slowing down, but his hesitation cost him valuable time. Both men found themselves slipping in the rankings, their earlier dominance crumbling under pressure. Then came the librarian's turn. She moved methodically through the course, conserving her energy and staying composed despite the chaos around her. Each step she took was deliberate, each shot carefully planned. When the wind picked up, she adjusted her aim accordingly, using its force to guide her bullets rather than fight against it. Her ability to stay calm under stress set her apart from the others, earning her consistent scores that kept her steadily climbing the leaderboard. By the fourth round, tensions among the competitors reached a boiling point. This stage required shooters to navigate an obstacle course while engaging multiple targets along the way. Speed and accuracy were equally important, and the physical demands pushed everyone to their limits. The ex-soldier powered through the course with brute strength, but his lack of finesse led to costly mistakes. The young hunter relied on his experience, but fatigue began to take its toll, causing his hands to tremble as he aimed. Spectators held their breath, wondering who would emerge on top. When the librarian entered the course, the crowd barely noticed. They were too busy watching the frontrunners stumble and recover. But she didn't need their attention. She tackled the obstacles with quiet efficiency, balancing speed with precision. At one station, she paused briefly to steady her breathing before firing 3 rapid shots, each hitting its mark dead center. A ripple of murmurs spread through the audience as people realized what they were witnessing. Even Tom, the instructor, watched with a mixture of pride and disbelief. He'd known she had potential, but this level of mastery exceeded his expectations. The final stretch of the course featured a tricky sequence. Shooters had to climb a short ladder, cross a narrow beam, and fire at a distant target without losing balance. Many failed this section entirely, their nerves getting the better of them. The ex-soldier nearly fell off the beam, his frustration boiling over as he yelled at himself. The young hunter managed to complete the task but missed the target by inches, groaning in disappointment. Then it was the librarian's turn. She ascended the ladder smoothly, her movements fluid and controlled. Balancing on the beam, she steadied herself, taking a deep breath before aiming. Time seemed to slow as she lined up her shot, blocking out the noise of the crowd and the pressure of the moment. With a soft exhale, she fired. The bullet flew straight and true, striking the center of the target with a resounding ping. The crowd erupted into cheers, stunned by her flawless execution. For the first time, the spotlight was fully on her, and she handled it with grace, bowing her head modestly, as if to acknowledge the support. The ex-soldier dropped his rifle in disbelief, shaking his head as he muttered, "How did she do that?" The young hunter clapped begrudgingly, unable to hide his admiration. Even Tom couldn't resist a smile, knowing he'd witnessed something truly special. What started as a quiet journey of self-improvement had transformed into a display of pure talent and determination. As the round ended, the rankings shifted dramatically. The librarian now stood neck and neck with the two frontrunners, setting the stage for a nail-biting finale. The tension in the air was palpable, and the crowd couldn't wait to see what would happen next. But for the librarian, the outcome didn't matter anymore. She'd already proven to herself and to everyone else that she belonged here. Whatever lay ahead, she faced it with the same quiet confidence that had carried her this far, and deep down, she knew the best was yet to come. The final round of the competition was unlike anything the participants or the audience had ever seen. It wasn't just about shooting anymore. It was a test of endurance, adaptability, and mental strength. The organizers had designed this stage to push everyone to their absolute limits. Competitors would face a timed obstacle course filled with surprises, moving targets, sudden changes in terrain, and even decoys meant to throw them off balance. By now, only a handful of shooters remained in contention, including the quiet librarian, the ex-soldier, and the young hunter. Each of them knew that this last challenge would decide everything. As the instructions were announced over the loudspeakers, the crowd leaned forward in anticipation. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Everyone could feel it. The stakes had never been higher. For the ex-soldier, pride was on the line. He prided himself on being tough, fearless, and unstoppable. Losing here, especially to someone like the librarian, was unthinkable. The young hunter felt the same way. Years of practice and bragging rights hung in the balance. As for the librarian, she didn't care about winning or losing. Her focus was simple: give her best effort and leave no regrets. When the starting whistle blew, chaos erupted. The competitors sprinted toward the first station, adrenaline coursing through their veins. The ex-soldier charged ahead recklessly, his military training kicking in as he powered through obstacles without hesitation. The young hunter followed close behind, using his agility to navigate tricky sections quickly. Both men moved fast, but speed alone wasn't enough. They began making mistakes almost immediately, missing targets, slipping on muddy patches, and wasting precious seconds recovering from missteps. Their frustration grew with every error, feeding into a cycle of panic and poor decisions. Meanwhile, the librarian took a different approach. While the others rushed, she moved deliberately, conserving her energy and staying calm under pressure. At each station, she paused briefly to assess the situation before acting. When faced with a moving target, she waited for the perfect moment to fire instead of rushing her shot. When confronted with uneven ground, she steadied herself carefully, rather than risking a fall. Her movements weren't flashy or dramatic, but they were effective. Every step she took brought her closer to the finish line, and every shot she fired hit its mark with precision. By the halfway point, the gap between her and the other two competitors had widened significantly. The ex-soldier's reckless pace had left him exhausted, his arms trembling as he struggled to aim. The young hunter fared slightly better but was visibly drained, his earlier confidence replaced by desperation. Both men tried to compensate by speeding up, but their haste only made things worse. Missed shots piled up, and their scores plummeted. The crowd shifted uneasily, sensing the tide turning. At one particularly challenging section, competitors had to climb a steep incline while engaging multiple targets positioned at varying heights. Most stumbled here, either struggling to scale the slope or failing to adjust their aim in time. The ex-soldier slipped halfway up, cursing loudly as he scrambled back to his feet. The young hunter managed to reach the top but missed 2 out of 3 targets, shaking his head in frustration. Then came the librarian. She approached the incline cautiously, testing her footing before committing to each step. Once at the top, she didn't rush. Instead, she crouched low, stabilizing herself before aiming. One by one, she picked off the targets with clinical efficiency, her shots ringing out like clockwork. The crowd erupted into cheers, unable to contain their excitement. Even the skeptics who doubted her earlier were now on their feet, clapping and shouting encouragement. For the first time, the spotlight belonged entirely to her, and she handled it with characteristic humility, focusing solely on the task ahead. The final hurdle of the course was the most daunting yet, a long-range precision challenge requiring shooters to hit 3 tiny targets simultaneously using a shotgun loaded with buckshot. Timing and aim were crucial. If any part of the setup went wrong, even slightly, the entire attempt would fail. This was where champions were made, or broken. The ex-soldier went first, his hand shaking as he raised the weapon. His first shot missed completely, scattering pellets harmlessly across the dirt. Frustration boiled over, and he barely managed to hit one of the remaining targets before giving up altogether. The young hunter stepped up next, determined not to repeat the same mistake. He steadied himself, carefully took a deep breath and fired. 2 of the targets shattered instantly, but the third remained intact, teasingly untouched. Groaning in disappointment, he lowered the shotgun, knowing his chances of victory were slim. Then it was the librarian's turn. The crowd fell silent, holding their collective breath. She walked up to the firing line, her expression calm and focused. Adjusting her grip on the shotgun, she took a moment to align her sights. The wind picked up slightly, rustling the nearby trees, but she didn't flinch. She exhaled slowly, steadying her breathing until her body felt perfectly still. And then, with a single fluid motion, she pulled the trigger. The blast echoed across the field, followed by 3 distinct thwacks as each target shattered into pieces. The crowd exploded into cheers, jumping to their feet in awe. People clapped, whistled, and shouted her name, stunned by what they'd just witnessed. Even the judges looked impressed, jotting down notes furiously as they confirmed her score. For a moment, the world seemed to stop spinning, leaving only the sound of applause and the image of the librarian standing tall, her rifle resting casually. At her side, the ex-soldier dropped his weapon in disbelief, muttering something under his breath. The young hunter stared at her, his jaw hanging open. Neither man could argue with what they'd seen. They'd been beaten fair and square. Slowly, reluctantly, they both began to clap, acknowledging her skill and determination. Even Tom, the instructor, couldn't hide his pride. Watching her transformation from a quiet beginner to a confident champion had been nothing short of remarkable. As the final scores were tallied, the results were clear. The librarian had won, not just by a small margin, but decisively. Her consistency, precision, and ability to stay calm under pressure set her apart from the rest. When the announcer called her name as the winner, the crowd roared louder than ever before. Cameras flashed, capturing the moment for posterity. Reporters swarmed around her, eager to learn her story. How had she done it? What was her secret? Her answer was simple. I just focused on doing my best. It wasn't the dramatic response people expected, but it resonated deeply. In a world obsessed with noise and bravado, she reminded everyone that true greatness often comes from quiet dedication and unwavering belief in oneself. She didn't seek fame or recognition, but she embraced the opportunity to inspire others. Under her guidance, several newcomers joined the shooting club, encouraged by her example. Together, they formed a community built on mutual respect and shared passion. Even the ex-soldier and the young hunter eventually warmed up to her, recognizing her skill and humility. Over time, the 3 of them became unlikely friends, practicing together and sharing tips. The rivalry that once divided them gave way to camaraderie, proving that sometimes competition can bring people closer rather than drive them apart. And so, the quiet woman who was once ignored at shooting class became a legend. Not because she sought glory, but because she showed what was possible when you refused to let doubt define you. Her journey taught everyone an important lesson. Greatness isn't about being the loudest or the strongest. It's about staying true to yourself and trusting in your own potential. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she faced them with the same quiet confidence that had carried her this far. The days following the competition were unlike anything the quiet librarian had ever experienced. Overnight, she went from being an invisible face in the crowd to a local celebrity. People who hadn't given her a second glance before now stopped her on the street to congratulate her or ask for advice. Reporters called her at home, eager to interview her for newspapers and TV segments. Friends of friends tagged her in social media posts, sharing videos of her final shot, the one that shattered all 3 targets with perfect precision. It was overwhelming, but not in a bad way. For someone used to blending into the background, the sudden attention felt surreal. At first, she tried to downplay her victory. "I just got lucky," she'd say when people praised her performance. But deep down, she knew it wasn't luck. Every bullseye, every clean shot, every moment of calm under pressure had been earned through countless hours of practice and unwavering determination. She didn't set out to become famous. She simply wanted to prove to herself that she could do something difficult. Yet here she was, standing in the spotlight, inspiring others without even trying. One of the most surprising changes came from within the shooting community itself. Before the competition, many of her classmates dismissed her as someone who wouldn't last long in the sport. Now they approached her with newfound respect. Some even admitted they'd underestimated her and apologized for their earlier remarks. The ex-soldier, once so quick to mock her, started asking for tips on improving his aim. The young hunter who'd spent weeks boasting about his skills began inviting her to join him for practice sessions. Their rivalry had transformed into camaraderie, built on mutual admiration and shared goals. Even Tom, the instructor, couldn't resist teasing her a little. "Looks like I underestimated you too," he said during one of their private lessons. "You've got a gift, not just for shooting, but for staying cool when everyone else is losing their heads." She smiled at his words, feeling a sense of pride she hadn't allowed herself to feel before. Winning the competition wasn't just about personal achievement. It was about breaking stereotypes and showing that talent isn't defined by age, gender, or background. Her success inspired others, especially women, to take up shooting, something she never expected but deeply appreciated. Several new faces joined the beginners class after hearing her story, including a few older ladies who joked about forming a book club with rifles. Seeing them laugh and bond over shared challenges filled her with joy. But fame wasn't without its challenges. As word of her victory spread, some people questioned how a simple librarian could outshoot seasoned competitors. A few skeptics accused her of having prior training or relying on tricks rather than skill. One online commenter even suggested she must have cheated somehow. These accusations stung, but she refused to let them get to her. Instead, she invited critics to come watch her practice. When they saw her flawless technique and heard Tom vouch for her dedication, their doubts melted away. Over time, even the harshest skeptics became supporters, admitting they'd misjudged her. Her humility only added to her appeal. Unlike some champions who basked in glory, she remained grounded, continuing to work at the library and live her life as usual. She turned down lucrative sponsorship offers, saying she didn't want to commercialize her passion. Instead, she focused on mentoring newcomers, teaching them the same lessons she'd learned: patience, discipline, and the importance of believing in yourself. Her students adored her, often calling her the calmest coach ever. They loved how she broke down complex techniques into simple steps, making the sport accessible to anyone willing to try. One evening, while helping a group of beginners at the range, she noticed a young girl struggling to hold her rifle steady. The girl looked close to tears, frustrated by her lack of progress. Setting aside her own gear, the librarian knelt beside her and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "It's okay," she said gently. "Everyone starts somewhere. Let me show you a trick." She guided the girl through basic breathing exercises, explaining how slowing down her breath could steady her hands. Then together they lined up a shot. The girl hesitated, unsure if she could do it. "Trust yourself," the librarian encouraged. With a shaky exhale, the girl pulled the trigger and hit the target dead center. Her face lit up with pure delight, and she threw her arms around the librarian in gratitude. Moments like these reminded her why she kept coming back to the range, even after achieving so much. As months passed, the initial buzz surrounding her victory began to fade, but her impact endured. The shooting club grew larger and more diverse, welcoming people from all walks of life. Local schools invited her to give motivational talks, where she shared stories of perseverance and self-belief. Her message resonated with students and teachers alike. You don't have to be the loudest or the strongest to succeed. Sometimes quiet determination is enough. Even outside the world of shooting, her influence reached further than she realized. Neighbors who'd barely known her before started seeing her differently, not just as a librarian, but as a role model. Parents told their kids about her journey, using her story to teach lessons about hard work and resilience. Strangers struck up conversations with her at the grocery store, thanking her for inspiring them to pursue their own passions no matter how daunting they seemed. Despite all the changes in her life, one thing remained constant: her love for the sport. Every evening she returned to the range, practicing until the stars came out. Even though she'd already proven herself, she knew there was always room to improve. Each session brought new insights, new challenges, and new opportunities to grow. And while she enjoyed sharing her knowledge with others, these quiet moments alone with her rifle were still her favorite part of the day. Looking back, she realized how far she'd come since that first awkward day at the range. Back then, she was just a woman with a dream, hoping to learn something new. Now she was a champion, a mentor, and a symbol of hope for anyone who dared to believe in themselves. But none of it changed who she was at her core: a quiet, determined soul who found strength in focus and joy in mastery. And as she stood there, rifle in hand, watching the sun dip below the horizon, she felt a deep sense of peace. Whatever the future held, she knew she'd face it with the same quiet confidence that had carried her this far. After all, greatness isn't about seeking applause, it's about staying true to yourself and trusting in your own potential. And in that moment, she understood that she'd already achieved something truly extraordinary. Months had passed since the competition, and life in the small town settled into its usual rhythm. The excitement surrounding the shooting event gradually faded, replaced by the humdrum of daily routines. But for the quiet librarian, things were different now. She wasn't just another face in the crowd anymore. She'd become a part of something bigger than herself, a symbol of perseverance, humility, and the power of believing in your own potential. Though the noise around her victory had quieted, the ripple effects of her journey continued to spread far beyond what she could have imagined. At the shooting range, the club had grown significantly. New faces appeared every week: men, women, teenagers, and even seniors eager to learn. Many came because they wanted to follow in her footsteps, inspired by how she'd turned determination into triumph. Others joined simply because they saw shooting as more than just a sport. It was a way to connect with others, challenge themselves, and find peace in the precision of the moment. The librarian welcomed them all with open arms, offering guidance, without ever expecting anything in return. Her teaching style was unique. Unlike instructors who barked orders or demanded perfection from day one, she approached each student with patience and kindness. Rome wasn't built in a day, she'd say with a smile when someone grew frustrated over a missed shot. Take your time, you'll get there. Her calm demeanor made people feel at ease, especially those who doubted their abilities. One older man, a retired teacher named Frank, struggled to steady his hands during early sessions. He almost quit after a particularly rough practice, convinced he was too old to learn. But she encouraged him to keep going, reminding him that progress didn't happen overnight. By the end of the month, he hit his first bullseye and cried tears of joy right there on the range. Stories like Frank's weren't uncommon. Under her mentorship, countless individuals discovered strengths they never knew they had. A young mother juggling work and family found solace in the focus required for target practice. A shy teenager gained confidence through mastering new skills. Even Tom, the grizzled instructor, admitted he'd learned a thing or two from watching her teach. She doesn't just train shooters, he once told a group of newcomers. She teaches them how to believe in themselves. Beyond the range, her influence extended into the community. Local schools invited her to speak at career days, not because she was famous, but because her story resonated with students. She talked about her journey, not just the victories, but also the struggles, the hours spent practicing alone, the doubts she faced, and the moments when giving up seemed easier than pushing forward. Success isn't about being perfect, she'd tell wide-eyed kids sitting cross-legged on gymnasium floors. It's about showing up even when it's hard. It's about trusting yourself, even when no one else does. Her words struck a chord, especially among girls who rarely saw women excelling in traditionally male-dominated fields. After one talk, a girl approached her with tears in her eyes. "I want to be like you," she said softly. "But I'm scared people will laugh at me." The librarian knelt down to meet her gaze. "They might," she replied honestly. "But let me tell you something. The only opinion that truly matters is yours. If you love what you're doing, don't let anyone take that away from you." The girl nodded, clutching her notebook tightly, as if holding on to those words forever. As much as she inspired others, the librarian also continued to grow personally. Winning the competition hadn't been the finish line. It was the start of a new chapter. Each visit to the range brought fresh challenges, whether it was experimenting with advanced techniques or competing in regional events. Though she no longer sought trophies or accolades, she relished the opportunity to test her limits. Every missed shot taught her something valuable, and every successful hit reminded her why she fell in love with the sport in the first place. Her relationship with the ex-soldier and the young hunter evolved too. What began as tense rivalry transformed into genuine friendship. They often practiced together, trading tips and cheering each other on. During one session, the ex-soldier joked, "You know, if we'd teamed up instead of competing, we might have won sooner." Everyone laughed, including her. Their bond proved that respect could bridge even the widest gaps, turning adversaries into allies. Despite her growing reputation, she remained humble. Fame didn't change her habits or priorities. She still woke up early to organize books at the library, greeted regular patrons by name, and spent evenings practicing under the stars. Her rifle collection stayed modest, consisting mostly of borrowed gear and hand-me-downs. When asked why she didn't invest in fancier equipment, she shrugged. "It's not about the tools," she explained. "It's about the person using them." Even so, opportunities came knocking. Shooting magazines featured her story, calling her an unlikely champion. A filmmaker proposed making a documentary about her journey, though she politely declined, saying she preferred to stay out of the limelight. A local business owner offered to sponsor her, but she turned it down, explaining that she didn't want money to dictate her passion. Instead, she focused on what truly mattered, helping others discover the joy of shooting and proving that greatness comes in many forms. One crisp autumn evening, as she stood alone at the range, she reflected on how far she'd come. From the quiet woman everyone ignored to the mentor inspiring countless lives, her journey had been anything alone ordinary. Yet she didn't see herself as extraordinary either. To her, she was just someone who refused to give up, who chose to rise above doubt and fear, and who trusted in her own quiet strength. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. As she fired one last shot, hitting the center of the target with effortless precision, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She didn't need applause or recognition to know she'd achieved something remarkable. Her legacy wasn't written in headlines or engraved on trophies. It was etched in the hearts of those she touched, in the lives she changed, and in the example she set for anyone brave enough to chase their dreams. And as she packed up her gear and headed home, the cool breeze brushing against her face, she smiled. Whatever lay ahead, she was ready. Because greatness isn't defined by noise or bravado. It's found in the quiet determination to keep moving forward, one step, one shot, and one moment at a time.